All right. Hi, Bob. Hi, Domino. How are you?
Great.
Bob,
Doing nothing.
I want to say first, wish you a happy birthday.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very
Yeah.
much. It means a lot to me.
Yeah.
It was yesterday, and I
Mm-hmm.
am now on the other side of my birthday.
You are. It is the heavy side layer of birthday. Yes.
Yeah. I mean,
Uh,
technically, I am technically within the 24 hours after I was born, technically. But it's only because I was born late at night.
one of my best friends celebrates the birthday month, so there is no thing. It's not a day. It's the entire month, and so every day gets to be its own thing.
I'm not saying your friend's gay, but gays do love that.
It's a lot. It's pretty great though. How have you both been managing during, I mean, probably the most unprecedented period that might be in any of our lifetimes right now? We have a pandemic, we have Pride Month, and I think the biggest civil rights activism that I've seen, all happening at the same time.
I mean, I'll go first. I know that for me, it has been, it's the perfect storm that created where we are right now. It was a combination of people being in quarantine, people trying to live off of $1,200 for the past 3 months, people seeing egregious murders being filmed and broadcast across the internet, and then it just got to a point where it was just all too much.
Absolutely too much.
And I think, very much, yeah, that was, it was all the things piled on together that have turned it into kind of such a, I think, tense but also necessary set of things for us all to go through, including the civil rights, including, I think, even some of the isolation from the pandemic, I think has been a learning experience for a lot of us. I'm not saying
I
it's a
agree.
good thing, but I think that like learning how to sit and be still is a challenge that I think is, not the worst thing in the world.
Yeah, I think it's given some creativity
Mm-hmm.
to people. It's also then allowed us to see things and watch things, and most especially your guys' show on HBO, We're Here, which came at, I think, at exactly the right time. I was talking to Shangela yesterday and talking about how it is this convergence of kindness and empathy and understanding in a perfect time to have that. How did you get involved directly as a consulting producer, Bob, and then Domino? How did you come aboard?
So I got a cold call. It was very Hollywood. A call from a number I didn't recognize. I got your phone number and I want you to be in the show. It's a secret. You have to meet in person. So I went down and I met with them, and the way I became a consultant, and I agreed to sign on. The way I became a consulting producer after we started having production meetings, they were like, "Well, we're gonna need this. We're gonna need designers. We're gonna need this stuff." And I was like, "Well, you're asking me, Shanj, and Eureka to essentially hire the entire drag creative team. We hired the hairdressers, we hired the designers, and the designers hired their assistants." And I was like, "That's producing work." I was
Mhm.
like, we're also making numbers. We're teaching people how to do stuff like that is producing work. And I remember saying early in the process, said, which is very bold. If anyone knows it, me, if I'm nothing, I'm bold. And I said in the meeting for the show that I may have gotten kicked off of, for saying I was like, we need to have producer credits. And I remember them being like, well, we'll see. And then I guess they agreed, and they were like, well, they deserve it because they're doing the work.
Yeah.
And I just got a call from Bob last summer saying, I'm doing this thing. Can you come? And it's a makeover show, and not the first makeover show I've done with you, but when I got more information on it, that was it. I got drawn into it, and we didn't know much in that first episode. I didn't know much about what this was going to be, or how it was going to happen, or where it was going to be broadcast, or any of those kinds of things. I had been told the way that it was pitched to me. I think through you, Bob, but also through when I talked to production some, was this is really about getting to know these particular people in this particular setting, and understanding sort of the culture in which that they live, how it is so unique, and how they fit into whatever that world is, either as a queer person, or in the first episode we did not have a queer person, but you know, we had a Black person living in a place with signs of very open racism. And kind of what does that mean? And then that the drag makeover part of it would be sort of supplemental to that information. And I think that that was really kind of what spoke to me about being involved with it, was that it was a personal set of stories, and not just like, here's some stranger, let's put him in a wig, it's funny, he can't walk in heels, you know.
Exactly.
That it got to be more than that, and that the drag part of it had to speak specifically to who they are, and you know, and what their journey has been.
Yeah, I'm curious, and I'll ask you, Domino. There is that really great episode where Bob recognizes the woman that made her skirt, Barbara.
Barbara.
Which I thought was really wonderful. What was there an opportunity to source from the towns that you were at, or did you kind of just, were you able to bring everything you needed?
I mean, you know, I mean, and that was a very particular case, because while we were there, we found out that one of Bob's drag daughters, all of his costumes were made by his grandma, and that we were like, this is the greatest thing ever, if she can make anything for it. Like, it just happened to work out that way. For the most part, I mean, we kind of would look ahead to see what was going to be there, but I had to bring just about everything, including sewing machines, and you know, we had a dress form that traveled along with us, and you know, all of the main fabrics that we would need, because when you get to these towns, you hope that you have a Joann's fabric. Sometimes we did. Certainly one episode, I think it was like 2 hours away if you needed something like that, and otherwise it was, what can you find at Walmart and Home Depot that you can make costumes out of if you don't already have it with you.
Oh, so it's like a Project Runway challenge.
It is. I mean, in a way, it's like a Project Runway challenge. You know, just but with even more limited kind of resources.
Yeah, there's no fabric wall to choose from.
There is no fabric wall. There's no there's no accessories wall. If you need a size 14 pump, you better get on Amazon and pray that they will. You know, you get to some of these places, and that 2-day shipping with Prime is no longer, doesn't exist anymore. You know,
or you can steal Eureka's.
And my suggestion was, if you need a size 14 pump, I said just buy 2 size 7s and glue them together. Anyway, I was asked to leave the design suite.
The conversation.
One of the really interesting things was, as you were going through the towns with your flyers of, here's our drag show, there were clearly people who had never seen a drag show before. And I think, or maybe even, you know, a drag queen, and maybe think that they all come from the city or were created in a lab somewhere. But all three of you, Shangela,
They are.
Yeah, well, yes.
They're created in a lab part.
You all come from very small towns. So do you think that helped the understanding on both sides when you had your conversations with people?
Well, I do want to actually comment on that. The idea of a drag queen being created in a lab is not far-fetched. I mean, the idea that we are the product of several people's imaginations in these rooms where they work together. So, I mean, the hips, the nails, the hair, the makeup are all created. So in essence, we actually are created in a lab and then pushed out into the street. It's like, you know, it's like when the Joker falls into the vat and comes out as the Joker. You know what I mean? You fall into the fabric and come out as Bob the Drag Queen. And we did have moments where people were like shocked by our presence. But what I found most interesting was, we did not bring queerness to these towns. The queers who were there, we didn't ship them in. We didn't ship those queers in from New York and Chicago and Atlanta and all the big cities. Those are queers that already exist in these towns. But it's just that me, Eureka, and Shangela are big, bright, loud, and we have over 1 million Instagram followers. So our voices are really loud. So then we took that opportunity to amplify the voices that were already in the towns.
Yeah. That's and you could see that when people would come to the shows, and there was almost like a sense of safety, that safety in numbers, and it was fantastic. Interesting now, thinking about the created in a lab thing, is the costume for Nate, the Bride of Frankenstein costume, and I had that later down in my questions, but now I'm kind of inspired to ask both of you what the inspiration for that was and the creation of that amazing costume.
So what happens is I come up with these. My entire building is shaking. I don't know what that is. So I come up with these ideas for numbers, and then when I have the idea for the number, I'll pitch it to Domino and say, "This is my idea for the number. What are you thinking for the look?" And I mean, Domino's my favorite designer. I have no qualms about saying that out loud. I've said it a lot of times.
It's on tape.
It's on tape. But you guys recording this? And I really like Domino's idea to interpret things in what I consider pretty unique ways. So when I say I want to do Bride of Frankenstein, but also Nate wanted it to be very gender fluid and be able to switch from one to the next really quickly, then Domino took over and came up with the image we see.
Well, I would say actually it was even before. Like we usually have to come up with at least an idea of what it's going to be before we really get to meet the people, and we get a paragraph about them. You know,
Wow.
he's indigenous, he's a part of the queer community, he's a photographer, maybe some examples of their work, a link to their Instagram, but you don't really get to know very much until you get there. But there's a sense that I had from kind of the beginning of like, this person's story isn't about them turning into a woman. It's about, expressing some part of themselves, and that drag doesn't have to be and look world. It's beauty and glamour. I think it's sort of creating the most extreme version or representation of themselves in a visual way. But Bob said to me, I think I want to do Sia's I'm Alive, but like Bride of Frankenstein. And that was all I needed to say, like, okay, I think that it's all about this idea of being a body stitched together of all these different parts of yourself that are all kind of equally valid, and that and to have that be what the strength is, and what the what alive means is like being all of those things simultaneously, not having to just be what somebody has forced you to be or made you to be or wants you to be, but all of the parts of yourself sort of loudly and in harmony with one another, and even when there's dissonance to that, that there's a beauty and power in all of that together.
And even within the nuances of the performance, like I would say things that I'm like, I want to, Nate's a photographer, I want to include his photography. So this first outfit needs to be stark white. It needs to go to the floor because it needs to double as a projector screen. And then Domino made that happen. And then I believe it was Domino who brought forth the idea of going from the Bride of Frankenstein to Frankenstein's monster. Okay, so me, Domino, and Kennedy, we're a team. I basically had the idea, and then we all refine it together.
Right.
So either Domino or Kennedy, one of them came with the idea of going from the Bride of Frankenstein into Frankenstein's monster.
Yeah, and I think go ahead.
Well, also I felt like it was really important, and some of it got cut in the edit, but to have Bob come out as a representation of the same thing, of like coming out and saying, this is the thing, as the mad scientist, but that also underneath all of that, he's a patchwork of, of all of these different things, and drawing. I mean, I tried as best I could, and that was a quick turnaround of an episode, but, but trying to come up with and run around and find fabrics that were kind of iconic moments or things that, there was the poodle skirt from your Drag Race promo that, so there was a panel that was yellow with a poodle on it. And there
the
was,
Ankara print. Where did you find that Ankara print in that town?
No, that came with me from New York. No, I did not find any kind of African prints at Joanne's Fabric in New Mexico.
I think what that episode also did, and a lot of them, is show people that all drag is really a form of protest, and it's a form of activism from its inception, and it brought a lot of visibility to the disappearing women in the indigenous community, both in Farmington and everywhere. And I think that's a great way, and one of the great things that the show does is is expose people to what they think drag is and what it means and what it can be.
Well, I don't want to make that unique to drag. I believe that marginalized people have an existence that is in and of itself a resistance.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are a marginalized person and you're existing, then you are resisting.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? And
Yeah.
especially if you're taking your resistance and you're amplifying it, or in my realm, making art out of it.
Yeah. Bob, you got quite emotional in a lot of the episodes.
Lies. I never cried.
It's on tape.
Never happened.
It's on tape. And we see a lot of these physical and emotional transformations happening with the people that you're mentoring, but how much did this change you as a person and as a performer?
How much did it change me? I don't know how much. I don't know that I'm like, I am a different person now.
Yeah.
I mean, we are always a different, like, as you go further in life, you always change. You always become different than you were before. You know, whenever someone meets me when I was 18, goes, "You changed." I'm like, I hope so. I hope I'm not the same 18. I'm 34. I hope I'm not like the 18-year-old you met when I was in college. But I do think that I got an opportunity, because when you go into these towns, you're asking people, because like, I'm not Oprah, I'm not Dr. Phil, I'm not a therapist, and I'm not helping. We're just connecting on a human level. So all I'm doing is like asking you about your story and then but also telling you about mine in the process as well. So for me, I think it's only fair that I offer you a little bit about my story if I'm going to ask you about yours, because I'm not a journalist. I'm not Katie Couric, out here.
I think,
I would also say that, in some way, Bob, you're our lens into these people's lives, and all of these stories are unique, but there's universality to all of it. And I think that almost anybody that is watching this show is connecting with it on a level that has to do with, even in some small way, we've all been marginalized in some situation or made to feel uncomfortable or like we didn't belong somewhere, certainly as queer people. But if you are anything of, out of the system of power, or if you've ever walked into a place where you are suddenly very, maybe you always have been in the position of power and you walk into a space where you no longer are, you know what that feels like. Mm-hmm. And I think that there's a power in finding some way to connect to these people, regardless of whether your shared experience is exactly the same or just relates to. And I think that was kind of one of the cool things about seeing all of this, and certainly seeing them in their own spaces and getting to know them.
Yeah, I think almost especially with the three local queens that you mentor, Bob. They said they saw each other just once in a while, and it felt like they didn't have the connection that they wanted to, and it seemed like it got better.
Well, I know how much my life improved when I started surrounding myself with queer people. I mean, the truth is, I can go months without talking to a straight person. I mean, months. And I live in New York City, which is arguably the gayest city in the world. I mean, I walk around and I'm just like, queer. Like, this is the queerest city in the world. And there's no neighborhood safe from us. We're everywhere. And when I was talking to, it was a Lavender, and I was like, well, how often do you see queer people? And Lavender was like, maybe like once every 3 months. And I was blown away. I was like, you don't even have friends? You don't go? She was like, yeah, once every couple of months. And I remember being like, I don't need that. And it's not about needing that, but I know that for me personally, it's nice to have that. And I was able to be in it. Like, I think about what Amelia said all the time. Everything about me has been used against me at one point in my life. Yeah. And that, I know a lot of people who can relate to that. So when I would think about being too Black, being too femme, being not pretty, being tall, not beautiful enough, in all those regards, and then I joined the queer community in New York City, and everything that was ever used to tear me down was then being used to lift me up. So imagine what happens when you find a drag community where they don't make fun of you for being fat. They congratulate you for being the big girl. When they don't make fun of you for being bald, they go, bitch, that bald head look is turning it. When they don't get onto you for being stone cold, they say, oh, she's serving face. You know, all the things that have been used against you are now positives. So why would you not want to be surrounded by people who are using the things that you thought were your negative traits and are telling you, in fact, they are the things that make you special, unique, and brilliant?
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. That was really lovely.
So, and kind of touching on what you were saying before, though, the interesting thing, and I know, you know, I come from a small town, not necessarily as small as some of these, but, you know, those feelings of being pretty isolated. And it's that same thing where it's like, there are actually people here, there are queer people here, there are other people that may not be just like you, but have, you know, but in those kind of spaces, it's really hard to find each other. And one of the things that I saw happen just about everywhere we went is, you know, when the shows would happen, suddenly everybody comes out of the woodworks, and it's not because they weren't there before. It's not because, like Bob said, we didn't ship them in from out of town. They were already there, but they didn't have a place to see each other or to be, you know, to be in each other's presence like that. And so it's pretty easy when you can't see anybody else to feel like you're the only one. And I think that's one of the beautiful things in this show too, is just to say, like, no, even in, you know, even in these kind of places that can feel so isolating, this is all here for you still. We just have to figure out how to bring people together to be able to share in that.
Absolutely. What was your favorite creations and favorite outfits from the run of the series?
For me, I know there's a double answer. What I felt the most beautiful, honestly, in my life I have ever felt was in the green outfit in Branson, Missouri. Something I did to my makeup that day, something Gloria did to my hair that day, something Domino did to my body that day, something about all those things combined. I was like, this is the most gorgeous I have ever looked in my life. And I felt the fiercest in the white stirrup denim leotard chaps from Twin Falls, Idaho. Also, I turned into a hat queen. I'm a hat gay in real life.
Mm-hmm.
But on We're Here, the team over at Domino at Bob the Drag Queen LLC made sure that I was a hat queen, which I love. The big yellow hat, the cowboy hat. I had a fascinator. My hair was a hat in New Mexico.
Yeah, you did. You did have a lot of very say something hat day hats in this. Definitely. And Domino, what was your either favorite creation or just favorite of anything?
Oh, I mean, I love comic books and science fiction, so getting to do that alien look to me was probably one of my favorites. You know, but I would say in general, there's a lot of these where it's like, when would you have the opportunity to wear any of this outside of this? It's not that you couldn't plan a number around it or whatever, but that was one of the things that was fun about those entrance looks, was like, this doesn't have to do a thing other than make a statement.
Yeah.
This doesn't have to work for the number. This doesn't have to, you know, be able to, you know, fly through the air. This doesn't have to be, you don't have to be able to dance in this. This just has to be a striking image that will shock, you know, shock and amaze and delight and maybe
goop and gag and feed the children.
Yes, exactly.
And the thing is too, like, because normally when I call Domino, we talk about the outfits, and it has to have these parameters. Like, it has to be able to pack down being this small, has to be in the suitcase. I have to be able to put it on really quickly between numbers. But this time we have carte blanche to make it big. It doesn't have to pack into this. We ship them back home after this. It doesn't. I don't have to like get into it really quick. It can have a corset and then a zipper and then hooks and then a fascinator and then a buckle and then a strap. It can have all that stuff because we have the time to do it.
Because we have the time. Well, I mean, I would say that the restrictions that you placed on me were few. In the first episode, it was the heat of summer in Gettysburg, and you said, I do not want to have to wear 4 layers of pantyhose and hip pads. So as long as you were like, I want my arms out and I need to have some petticoats or something, I will wear the corset, but I do not want to have to wear those hip pads. That's it. anything else goes. And I said, okay, gotcha. And then by the time we were filming some of the later episodes, it turned into, I need to be covered from my head to my toes.
Because we got into some
in the desert, and for that alien look, that was part of it, was like, I do not want any part of my skin to have to be exposed when I am walking out in the middle of nowhere in February in New Mexico.
I mean, the one that we ended up, the one that was like it was almost my breaking point, was in Branson, Missouri, because it was like 23 degrees. Now, granted, when you see me in a leotard, I'm actually covered from my ankles to about here because I'm wearing hip pads and stuff. So it looks like my legs are out, but in reality, my legs, I'm practically bulletproof at that point, which is convenient because there was a gun carrying town.
Right.
But I do remember being like, girl, it is cold. And that was our learning curve. And that was when I was like, oh, I need to be covered up. In the next town, I need to be covered.
Well, I would also say with some of them too, and that was one of the earlier episodes, we don't know what they're going to be asking you to do. Yeah. So that was the one where suddenly I'm hearing, oh, we're taking them out on a boat. And I was like, it is 23 degrees outside, and you want 3 showgirl drag queens on a boat? What?
They go. We're going to the desert and walking on rocks, and I'm like, I'm in a full 7-inch pump with a 3-inch platform on it. Like, what's good?
Yeah, that's how you just hurt yourself.
But I didn't.
But you didn't.
Right.
Well, Bob, Domino, thank you so much for talking with me today. I'm thrilled, and it was really, really great to chat.
My pleasure. Domino, we need
for having us.
Yeah.
I can't hear you, Bob.
Oh, shit. Did I get muted? What happened?
There you go.
We need to go into season 2. Like, we need to really put Eureka and Shangela to shame. All right,
congrats on season 2.
Yay!
I have another thing coming up. Be safe.
Yeah. Okay. Bye.
Have a good one.